First question is, there's an artery and a vein on here. Which one is which? This one is which one? Artery. That's right. How did you know?
Because the artery has to push the stuff.
Very good. So remember lecture, arteries are thicker wall because they have pressure, right? So pressure, thicker wall like a fire hose versus garden hose. They're usually more rounded, but don't, that's not always the rule. Right? So the main thing you want to look for is the thickness. Veins are usually thinner, there's less pressure, they tend to be more kind of blobby shape, not a round shape, not always. So you want to just, your first question is at an artery or vein. So the artery's on the left, veins on the right. So look for layers, the size of the layers basically. Okay, let's get close up. So there's something on the right, something on the left. The one on the right.
Artery.
Ah! How'd you know?
Thick wall.
Thicker than that. Vein over here, artery over there, right? So that's the clue you're looking for, is thickness of that layer. That's the big question. So once you know it's an artery or a vein, then you have to go back and name the layers within those layers, basically. So if you look at your magic sheet, there's tunicas, just like the eyeball had tunics. So you have tunica. So the easiest way to do it is start where the blood is on the inside, which is also called the lumen. It's white. And work your way this way and look for color changes. For example, can everyone see there's a little red line out here? Okay. That would be the innermost tunic, or the tunica interna, or tunica intima. Either way is fine. I learned intima, so that tends to be what I use. But intimate or close. All right, that's the one closest to the blood, or internal.
Only in arteries.
Actually, these ones have it too. It's just recall the layer from here to here.
Media?
Tunica media, meaning middle. So middle layer. Then what would you call from about here to about there? Externa, or also called the adventitia. So you have three layers. You have an interna, a media, and an externa. Literally inside, middle, and outside. And that's true for the veins. There are just fewer of it. So interna, smaller media, and there's an externa. So you go from the inside out, intima, media, and externa. If you know the layers, then you're supposed to memorize the tissues you find there. So inside your interna, in here, what tissue would be on a surface of a blood vessel? Epithelium, but because it's in your blood vessels, we call it endothelium. It's the same rule, just different place. Then you remember you had a basal lamina, which glued it on, which you really can't discern there. Right? So that's my interna. What's my media made out of? Smooth muscle. How do we know it has to be smooth muscle? Because it's involuntary, right? So smooth muscle, visceral muscle, and there's some elastic fiber. What is my externa made out of? Out here, where are those things? Areolar connective tissue, some fibrous connective tissue. So you're supposed to know on a slide, artery versus vein, tunica, and then within the tunica, the layers within it. So you memorize the bottom of 28, that's what you're going to do. So it's pretty simple histology is like. I'm going to give you just one.
That's not artery.
Are your voices for arteries?
Artery.
That is true. It's an artery. And how'd you know?
Thick wall.
Yeah, again, that media, which is the middle, is really, really thick. It's usually more round, not always, but fire hose is the analogy you want to use. Nice and round. Someone point out they roll them up. All right. Vein, how'd you know? Thinner wall, not as round, though it can be. It's more of a oblong kind of shape.
What's the stuff that's kind of hanging out in the middle?
This would be the blood cells here. These are blood cells. I'm not. Who knows, right? These are blood cells that are clotted up over here. I don't know what some stain, goop. That's a good science word. Makes it a little bit harder.
Artery Big.
Where's the artery?
On the
Right,
right.
left. Big thing right by your face.
This one?
Yeah.
Yes. We say, well, it's not perfectly round. Well, it's not always perfectly round. But the trick is, it's rounder than this thing, and it's thicker. There's that media. This thing over here would be the vein. It's less round, not as thick. There's some other. These are nerves, by the way, up here. Okay. But you get the idea. So your first goal, artery versus vein. And once you know that, they have the same layers, just different thicknesses. It's a pretty simple.
Too much light.
There's your category. So
Yeah,
all
the
they
next
have
one.
is an endothelium. They're one layer. There's nothing else in them. There's no muscle. Make sense? All right. This represents two different kinds of blood vessels. So we have the big guy in the middle. We have these two. The big one in the middle is a what? Artery, how did you know?
Thick walls.
Thicker. And what's really nice, if you turn it this way, you can tell right there there's a round and not round, thick and thin, right? That's the trick you want. So, but you can see the tunicas, you can see the tissues. There's another little trick. What are these?
Valves.
Valves. Who has valves?
Veins.
Veins have valves because of lower pressure. So this model matches the slide you saw in JDoc. So you do want to at least take a look at this and label the tunicas as well. You okay in the intertwined trees of love? All right, so give that a look. Okay, the rest of your lab is basically pure name it, claim it on the blood vessels. So let me walk you through briefly. This is just pure plug and chug. There's nothing I can tell you up here that's magical to make it easier. There are some things, though, you're supposed to know for each artery and vein on this list that never ends for 4 pages. You're supposed to know, I could ask you is for this week's quiz, you are required to write artery or vein, or A or B. Because that is one thing they're trying to figure out, is if you know the difference anatomically between them. You're also supposed to know if it's paired or unpaired. What that means in English, are there 2 of them, a right and a left, or is there just 1 of them? So if there's 2 of them, that's the way you think it is. There's a right and a left. But some of them, there's only 1. So for example, your brachiocephalic artery, there's only 1 of them. It's on the right side of your body, but there's only 1. So that one you'd say is unpaired. Right? The other thing you're supposed to know in your head is if there's an artery or vein with the same name. So if there's a brachial artery, is there also a brachial vein? The answer is yes. Right? So a cephalic vein, there is no cephalic artery. So as you're going through this list, you want to, the easiest way is to pay attention to the exceptions. Everything on this list will probably be paired and with a matching vein. There's only a handful of them that would not be paired and not match. So you probably want to pay more attention to the exceptions and not, just remember everyone else is 2 even. Right? The other, this is kind of a general rule of thumb. If the artery and vein are in the same place on the model, they're usually the same name because they lie next to each other. So I'll show you